That firm talk, that warm hug and that laugh will help your kid read fluently and become better at math.
That's the voice of this week's guest, Dr. Frederick Gooding Jr. Dr. Frederick Gooding Jr., also known as Dr. G, is a historian, professor, scholar, and educator whose work explores African American history, hip-hop, identity, and the ways education can help young people recognize the genius already inside of them. Dr. Gooding shares his journey as a Black male educator, a father, and a truth teller who believes deeply in the power of history, culture, and relationship. Today we talk about 1, how Black men navigate front stage and backstage versions of themselves. 2, why African American history is American history. 3, the difference between being seen as smart and being seen as cool. 4, why educators must recognize the brilliant students already bring into the room. Hope you're ready, get out your notes, and let's start the show.
As a male educator at your school site, it can get lonely. Only 23% of K-12 educators in America are male. And just think about what this gender gap means for your male students. They experience disproportionate levels of discipline. This is a show for male educators who want to feel more understood by their community and want to create emotionally safe classrooms and schools for the next generation of male students. Welcome to unMASKing with Male Educators. Dr. Frederick Gooding Jr., welcome to unMASKing with Male Educators.
Thank you for having me, Ashanti.
Well, I would love you to just introduce yourself. Tell folks what you want them to know about you before you and I jump into talking about our masks.
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Frederick Gooding Jr., aka Dr. G. I am the captain of my ship, the master of my destiny, the author of my script, the father of my family, PhD in history, Georgetown University.
Come on now. Are we doing spoken word? We doing spoken word up in here? Oh, come on. All right, good.
Just saying,
that was beautiful.
Trying to cover the bases. That's all.
that was beautiful. Tell me. Wait. Okay. So I was so mesmerized by the flow. I didn't even how you listen to a song and you listen to a song. You're like, oh, that beat was nice, and they're like, you didn't hear the words. I'm like, no, I didn't hear the words. I just heard the beat, right? So I missed it, but that's the context of how it works. I mean, good music, good language, good conversation. You sometimes I really enjoy having that conversation. And I don't think I remembered some of the facts, right? Because it was the connection, right? So thank you for that. That was beautiful. That was fantastic. You and I are going to jump into our masks. So what would you like to happen in terms of the mask? Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't mind going first. I mean, although, this is my first time doing something like this, but, I appreciated the mask exercise because it reminded me of, Joe Fagan's work, who talks about front stage, backstage behavior. Right. And I think as African Americans, well, at least I'll come out and just say I am an African American male in case no one was able to tell. But the idea is that Dr. W.B. Du Bois talked about this way back in the day, I believe 1913 in The Souls of Black Folk, when he talked about this idea of the double consciousness. And so Joe Fagan talks about this idea of front stage, backstage behavior, whereby on the front stage, there's one way that we may act or behave. And then on the backstage, there's one way that we're thinking, but we may not act out that behavior. Now, that's because I have a PhD. Sometimes I make things sound a little extra complicated, right? But that's a very involved way of saying, hey, we all have parents, but do you talk the same way around your parents the way you speak to your friends, right? Do you talk to your parents the same way you speak to your friends? I mean, you're the same person, you have the same thoughts, but the idea is that you might modify how you express your thoughts and ideas when you're around your parents out of respect, right? As opposed to how you might with your friends. I mean, if anything, if a fly on the wall was listening to the way you talk to your friends, you would think, does he even like these people? I mean, just the way you might insult them or joke around with them, right? And so when we talk about front stage, backstage, I think it takes on a larger dynamic, but and with more serious consequences, whereby not necessarily out of respect,
Yeah.
but out of rules, right? Norms,
Mm.
social norms that have been created in terms of how one operates. And then when you throw on the layer of race, how
Mm.
black males like yourself and myself
Yeah.
are expected to perform or behave, and what are the limitations, right? In terms of how angry can you get? Well, the answer is, of course, you can get angry. It's a human emotion, but how expressive can you be with
Mm.
that anger is always a question. And so I think that factors into, my brother, your exercise about the mask, about
Yeah.
what you present versus what is actually presenting in your head, and how do you go about negotiating and navigating the two, or the two-ness, as Dr. W. Du Bois talked about.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for bringing those two. I've heard of Dr. W. Du Bois, but I've not heard of Joe Fagan. So I'm going
Mm.
to be looking at that. And I wonder, was he talking about front stage, backstage? Was he using like a metaphor about like acting, like theater, or was he using it in terms of how we show up in the world? Like, was it actually using the stage as just a word to connect how we show up outside in the world and in our homes, or was he actually connecting it to theater or something like that?
Um, I think it's probably the former, in terms of just how we show up in the world. I
Yeah.
think your creative juices are adding to the whole stage piece. But then again, it's all fair game, because I mean, didn't some famous writer named Shakespeare or something say all the world's a stage? So there's this idea of performance, right?
Yeah.
Performance. But the question is, what does that mean for people of color
Yeah.
who are wrestling with this idea of what is sincere, what is authentic, what is true, versus this idea of performing, right? Or at least presenting one's ideas and thoughts in a way that does not maybe trigger any alarm bells, that would, cause undue consternation, castigation, or, even, investigation, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we understand that oftentimes, when we do things, they can, come under another level of scrutiny.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, yeah. I resonate with that big time. And I think that's connected to to how the mask showed up, how it started with those young men
Okay.
in Oakland, California. It was
Okay.
like they had good stage presence. They came to school, they dress away, they talk away, there's certain swag, there's certain language. But when we got into a room to talk about what's really going on,
Right.
the only reason I happen to be in a room with them is because they're getting kicked out of advisory class. Now, advisory
Mm,
class is the class you should get an A at just because.
right.
Like,
Just because.
advisory is
Right.
like, I just sit here and pretend like I'm getting advice from this person. Like,
Right.
just do the little things, right?
Right.
And they were getting kicked out of advisory, which is like it's like, what is going on? So I took all these young men into my advisor. I said, I'm making my own advisor. I'm a dean. Okay, I'm not technically an advisory teacher, but I'm gonna do it because you can't be
Yes.
walking the halls. I'm already chasing you around the halls anyway, so we might as well
Okay.
be together. So
Okay.
we're gonna be in here. And then you realize, oh, every time we start trying to talk about something real, somebody wants to make fun of somebody's shoes. Somebody wants to talk about somebody's mama. Somebody wants to
Mm,
make a joke. Like,
mm,
oh, they can tell when we're about to get real, and they
mm.
are so. I'll use the word fear. They're afraid of what it means to be able to talk about what I'm really feeling
Right.
because they're so used to being making fun, like making jokes, like you said, making jokes, like, oh, dude, look at that, and then somebody goes too far, right?
Yeah. Right.
You talked about that, it was okay. You talked about that, and now you hit the nerve. And now, but I'm not sad about it. I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm angry about it. So now, what they're doing is just emotional immaturity, just showing up and activating over and over again. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so
Mm,
when we first did the activity as a part of that documentary, I just told the group that was going to film us. I said, look, just prepare that the group I'm working with, you may see a fight. Just be
okay.
prepared. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm,
I've tried all my best magic with these young men, and I can't get. I mean, their force fields are tough.
right.
Their
Right.
masks are locked in. And I wasn't even really thinking about the mask in the context that way
Mm,
until I was like, what if I don't make them talk about it? What if they don't have to talk about it? What if we just show? What if we just write it?
yeah.
Today, we're not going to talk about how you feel, what you
Right.
feel. I just want you to write some words on this piece of paper with
Right.
no names, and
Right.
that's what became this mask movement. And I
Well,
think that
Well, I say, and I think it's important you use the word movement because I think that's exactly what it is in terms of helping us. I mean, first of all, I just want to give you your flowers, live and say, thank you. I appreciate you taking this space and place. You care about people, and obviously about, Black males. And so I think it's just important to acknowledge that you are helping us, move in a direction where we can get to the real, the substance, because as you had indicated in your anecdote, a lot of these men may end up fighting one another over some superficial insult, but at the heart of it is these are individuals with feelings that maybe have not been fully respected, and these feelings are complicated. I mean, when you think about all the things that you're navigating now as an adult, well, you can only imagine how confusing it is as a young adult when it's all brand new, right? And how do you process that? And when there's no proper outlet, right? When there's no proper outlet. And so if anything, again, I'm not excusing or justifying negative violent behavior, what have you. That's not what we're talking about. But at the same time, we can explain, right? Not excuse it, but we can explain behavior and say that, what, maybe these are built up defense mechanisms, right? The jokes, because maybe many of these men have been in situations where when I did offer my real honest thoughts and feelings, which were tender and which were fragile, they weren't respected. No one understood them, and people dismissed them. And are you sure people were treating you that way because of your race? Are you sure about that? And here I'm double thinking, I'm self-conscious, so it's not even worth it for me to quote unquote share. So I'll just pack it inside, right? Really, really deep, and it never has a way of really getting out unless someone like you said, okay, you know what? Yeah, I see you roaming the halls, but why don't you spend a little time with me? Right. And I think you actually showing that you were invested in them as individuals, building that relationship, that probably was the key to unlocking the door, because and I'm not trying to sidetrack. I know you want to get to my mask points, but one of the pieces that hopefully we'll get to is that's one of the reasons why I firmly believe hip hop is an underused tool, pedagogical tool that we can use, because right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about a line from a hip hop track, right? Where they said, maybe that firm talk, that warm hug, and that laugh will help your kid read fluently and become better at math. So in other words, it's not just, did you study the times tables? Let's do them again. Let's do them a third time. Let's do them a fourth time. But I think what this line was saying in the track was, but if you just show this kid love, if you just have a relationship with this individual, they will all of a sudden become invested and perhaps more receptive to what it is that you're trying to teach. But again, we'll get back to the hip hop piece in a minute. So I know you asked me about the maths.
No, but that was powerful. Before, yes, and the conversation goes exactly where it's supposed to go. That line you just said, as a former math teacher, you got me excited. Right? He's like, okay, I wish I had ever heard that when I was a teacher. I would have had it on posters on my wall, right? But also when I talk to parents about their sons and their daughters are in math class, I've had so many parents that would say, "Well, I'm bad at math too. I was bad at math too." So they can easily excuse certain things because they are looking at it through their lens, right? As opposed to like, well, that's okay. I'm sorry that you feel like you were bad at math, but this is a new day, a new teacher, a new year, and there's a new generation. This is your generation. They don't have to do everything you did the way you did it, right? And really creating that space, right? So even the powerful words, like I wouldn't have I couldn't have put words together like that. It would probably taken me 80 words to get that, those words. But I felt that. I felt that as an educator.
And just to build on that, maybe also when we're talking about educating and and moving and movement and opening ourselves to ideas, maybe the proper question is bad at what type of math? Because I would actually refute that notion, just that blanket statement, I'm bad at math, right? Because I mean, think about how that same father might play the game of basketball, and if they do, and if they're any good, then they're employing mathematical principles, my brother. Think about it. Speed, trajectory, velocity, angle. I mean, come on. I mean, these are computations that you are making, but you're doing it on a rapid level. And so you often take it for granted. But this is dynamic thinking and processing in the moment, right? Why did De'Aaron Fox, try to go for that layup? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. back to the program. Okay, I'm not trying. Yeah, that historic.
Was that last night? Was that last night?
Yeah. Oh man. But you know what I'm saying? So, but it's dynamic thinking in the moment where you're constantly calculating and processing is my point. And even just this idea of weight, mass. I mean, you know that, okay, if you have a 7'4" individual, you know, their reach is going to be, you know, significant. Well, therefore, it may not be, you know, wise for me to do this later. You're constantly calculating, right? Constantly. In other words, I think as educators, it's our job to continue to stay flexible, open, and creative, and remind people about how they actually know more than what they oftentimes give themselves credit for. I mean, you know the old saying, right? My teacher once told me that I was smarter than what I was, so I was.
Nice. I have not see. Okay, a teacher. Yes, that's exactly right. My teacher once told me that I was smarter than I was, so I was.
Boom. Right?
Yeah.
Boom. I mean, and think about for yourself how, you know, I mean, because I think it's one of the questions, you know, why did I become an educator? Well, I mean, think about for yourself. It's the same reason. Somewhere along the way, somebody helped you, Ashanti. Somebody helped you because what they taught you something. They gave you something. They gave you a piece of themselves, a piece of information. You know, they gave you something and it helped you. It resonated with you and it's still with you. It carries you. And one of the reasons why I'm an educator and still wake up every day with the blessing of being an educator is because I know what that feeling was like for me. And each one reach one, each one teach one. And again, oftentimes I'll speak to hundreds of people at a time, thousands of people at a time. Listen, so long as there's one individual in that audience that feels what I'm saying, mission accomplished. I go to bed with peace in my heart. You understand what I'm saying? Because I was able to plant that one seed and keep the chain moving. And I am so very appreciative of everything that has been taught to me. Again, and many of my educators I've never even met.
Yeah.
Right? You know, whether they be individuals who have written books that, you know, I just read, you know, ex parte, right? I never talked to them, but I'm appreciative of what or they might even be lessons handed down from my ancestors. You know, I never met my great-great-grandmother, but apparently she told my great-grandmother who told my grandmother who told my mother who told me.
Yeah.
Right? And I appreciate it.
The lessons.
And if I can do that for someone else, then I have lived a life.
That's it. And I wonder for you, like in this context, like of this idea, this concept, this metaphor of a mask. When you talked about earlier about as Black men showing up in places, having to figure out where am I safe? Where can I be my full self? Where do I need to put on and perform? Where do I need to be on stage? I remember, I don't know the name of the author, but it was a book. It was a little mini document. Maybe it was a documentary, but it was called Tough Guys. Tough Guys, Guise.
Okay.
And Cool Pose, right? There was another one, Cool Pose, right? So this one was this idea of like, oh, you got tough guys. I got to put on this show of what it means to be tough in my community. I grew up in Oakland, California. There's some rules around what it means to walk down the street. You better not be smiling too much. I was always smiling too much. I always seem to. I go from smiling too much to my normal. I earn my father's lips, who is face down. If I'm not perfectly smiling, I'm frowning. So in my house, you can't be frowning. So I'm always trying to be like I'm smiling. I go out in the streets and they're like, who you mugging? I'm like, why are you smiling so much? I'm like, oh, well, what's in between this normal look and putting on a smile? I always have to be in action. Like I'm always activated. Like, how do I have to be here in this moment? Like, and I think that's what we see oftentimes is so the exhaustion.
No, you're right, because going back to building upon where we first started with the idea of the two-ness, I mean, it is exhausting to have to constantly code switch and go back and forth. And, I mean, we've seen these movies where, someone has a double identity and how, in the beginning it works, but by the end of the movie, it's not working as well. Right. But this is not a movie. This is real life. This is every day. Right. Yeah. So how do you navigate that? Right. And going back to what you were saying about smiling too much. I mean, just think about what you just said. Yeah. How is there such a thing as smiling too much? I mean, isn't that the point to enjoy this thing called life? It's hard enough as it is, right? Yeah. And so this idea of us having to choose, as Jawanza, rest in peace, Jawanza Kunjufu talked about, so many black males have this dilemma of choosing to be cool or choosing to be smart. And my whole thing is like, no, I don't understand why we have to choose. One and both are the same inside me, right? I'm a cool cat and I'm smart. You know what I'm saying? Why do we have to hide it? Well, I mean, what's this about? Because, I'll answer that question rhetorically. Part of it is we have toxic masculinity, and that's just for any male of any color, where it's very confusing on what is a man and how to express it. And so, and I think things are evolving, a bit, but I mean, we've gone from, this idea of the stoic cannot cry, really stiff to, okay, well, actually, maybe it takes a man to actually cry, and express his emotions and actually sit down and, play with the kids as opposed to, wife, you handle that. Like, what's that about? Like, if anything, if a man wants to stay married nowadays, he better learn how to do dishes and cook. You know what I'm saying? Today, at least, right? So this idea, okay, we have to adapt, change, and share. Right. But then when you throw on the layer of blackness, it can become all the more confusing about, okay, well, like you said, if I'm smiling too much, does that mean I'm soft? Does that mean that I'm now open to, to cats trying to come up to me and try to, do this, that, and the third, versus, should I, just try to get along and go along. And I think that, as we're, navigating this conversation, I would like to return back to hip hop. Because for me, that's one of the spaces and places where this idea of not having to choose is evidently manifest. Where if anything, people are rewarded, not everyone, right? But people are rewarded for displaying the profound intellect, right? I mean, think about Nas and Jay-Z and all the ones, your favorite rappers that you like. We don't give praise and honor and respect to these individuals because they suck. And it's because they have skill. And I mean, if you're Nas, how do you write a song backwards? It's called rewind, by the way. Right? It hurts my head to think about how do you sit down and write a song backwards, right? And so clearly this is an individual who is thinking. And because he made it work and it sounds dope, we give him what? Praise and respect. Right. So in other words, he didn't have to dumb down who he was. He was able to, to express himself and his creativity, and he was still able to be rewarded. And so I feel that, we're overlooking, hip hop here when we talk about all this, black genius or all these people of color, we don't know what to do with them. Well, I'll tell you what to do. I mean, let's look inside these souls, right? Because, you get me on a tangent, but if you want to know where to find the cure for cancer, I say it's somewhere in the ghetto. But we're never going to find it because we don't know how to look, right? Look inside the souls of these gifted and talented individuals, right? Gifted and talented is not just a 1450 in the SAT. Yes, that's one way. Yes, the person who got the high score is smart. I'm not debating that, but that's not the only way to prove that somebody's smart.
That's right. And I mean, and we're already into education and we're already into like what that looks like and how it shows up, because I think the way we, I don't know the poet or the, where they came from. It's like, if you were to measure a fish on its ability to climb a tree.
Oh, wow.
You could easily just think that this fish is absolutely stupid, flopping around at the bottom in the dirt. Like, what are you doing? Like, but it's oftentimes we try and take kids who are good at certain things, measure them by the reading, writing, arithmetic, which we want students to know. But the fact they came to school not knowing it, we blame them because we put them now in a place where all they did when they were at home was eat their snacks, help their grandma, help out mom, do these things. They didn't pick up books and read. They didn't pick up paper and write. They were doing stuff. They were always busy doing stuff, but we measure them by these other things. And so then they come to school feeling worse because they're like, I'm bad at everything. But they're nurturers. They're caretakers.
Oh, right.
They know how to take care of a home. They know how to make a 5-course meal, but no one's measuring them by all the skills they have at home, because school is like, well, you don't read well and you don't write well.
Absolutely.
And you don't speak well. But
absolutely.
And so I think we end up measuring them by the wrong measurement sometimes.
Absolutely. And like you said, I mean, and especially when you talk about like the open job marketplace, I mean, think about how many colleagues you work with who you wish, had more of those empathetic skills and nurturing skills that you talked about. So you pass the test. I mean, you have the degree, you have the job, but you don't have the results. You don't have the connection. Like, the students aren't responding to you. Because you're missing that bedside manner. There's that relationship is not being formed, in a proper manner, right? So I mean, it's not one or the other, but like you were saying earlier, but maybe it's a both and, right? I think we could do better at synthesizing as opposed to discarding so many talented individuals.
Okay. Well, see, this is what happens. Sometimes the mask goes first, and sometimes the mask goes in the middle. So,
okay. So you want me to go through the three one by one?
You want to go first? You want to go? Yeah, absolutely. So the front is, what are the things you gladly let the world see as an educator, as a professor, or whatever role you want to hold it as? And then what are the things that you don't normally talk much about?
So, for sure, I want people to know that I'm serious. Going to what you're saying, right? About this, because I believe the things I'm talking about are serious, right? And it bothers me that, particularly when it comes to African American history, right, that is still up for debate. I don't know. I mean, from Florida to Texas, I'm confused over why we are confused. I mean, because it is impossible. And again, anybody can email me at f.gooding@tcu.edu, right? Anyone can email me and tell me, right, how, I'm not seeing this properly, but it is impossible to tell this story of American history without invoking African American history. So therefore, African American history is American history. You cannot tell the story. You cannot tell the story of American history without invoking African American history. Period. Period. And so this idea that it's not still treated with the respect and dignity I believe it deserves bothers me. So on my front mask, I'm serious, right? Because what I'm talking about is serious, and I want you to take it serious. Because I will go on record and say, I do not understand how 5 years later or 55 years later, it is cool to make George Floyd jokes. I'm talking about the Kevin Hart roast. Yes, I said it. Okay. I'm serious. See, that's what I'm saying. I'm serious. So maybe you think it's funny. Maybe he thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
I don't. I fail to see the humor, right? In the George Floyd joke. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Because why? Because this is serious. I mean, you and I are building and politicking, but no, this is serious. Yeah. This is very serious, right? So number two is I want people to understand that I'm passionate, right? And which is I believe manifest, right? But right now, especially when I hear the video, you just feel the energy, right? In my voice. There's a sense of urgency, right? Because I am passionate about this. I believe in what I'm saying. Otherwise, what am I doing if I don't believe in what I'm doing, right? What am I doing, right? But I believe. So so God forbid. But if I go today, I go knowing that I told the truth as I saw it and as I understood. You understand? Right? Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's it. And so, and lastly, I want people to understand that I'm objectively minded, right? I do my research. I look at both sides of argument, and I'm careful in considering my conclusions, right? So that's my front stage for prior mass. Now, the flip side of that, okay, I said I'm serious, right? Well, the fact of the matter is that I have a very extensive brand of humor. You see what I'm saying? But going to what you just said, see, I'm always cautious about opening with the humor because you know what happens? Then people think, you're too nice a guy, you're soft or whatever the case may be, and they try to take advantage, right? Yeah. And that bothers me, right? Because, trust me, I've tried the nice guy, approach, numerous times. And for the most part, that's still my ontology and my approach. It's not necessarily start off with the negative, but in many circles, though, particularly professional circles, I mean, once you open up the teeth, it's like, people just think, oh, okay, and it's like ironic because it seems like the a-holes in the world kind of like get the, response from the system, I've seen it myself, my brother. I've been in meetings where she or he, right? I'm not gonna name names, is talking any which way. And I'm like, this is so rude. Oh my God. This is so rude. And yet they get results. I'm like, I can't talk to people like this. Because why? Because going back to what you said about the whole nurturing piece, I also had siblings and, but you can't talk to people. Yeah, well, at least not around my neighborhoods. You can't talk to people rude. There's going to be consequences for that. Yeah. People may not have much, right, around where, the people I know, but they have pride and dignity, and you will not disrespect me. So I come from a place where there are consequences if you're rude to people. Even just like, we get the whole family together, and if you see somebody, first thing in the morning, it's like, 19 of us in the home, for Christmas, whatever. You got to say good morning. You can't just walk by somebody and not say good morning. Right. Like, then it'll be a problem for the rest of the day. Oh, they ain't like they didn't see me. So in other words, this idea of starting off with humor, sometimes I'm cautious about that, about, they going to take it the wrong way. I know who I am, but are they going to take it the wrong way and try to take advantage? Right. So that's always like a thing. And particularly, like I said, in certain professional circles, the minute you start cracking jokes, then they think, they can you crack one little joke, inch and go a mile. Then it's like, okay, no. So again, let's go back to being serious. Take what I'm saying serious. Let's go back to that. I can't even joke around with you because you're not, calibrating correctly. So on the other side of passionate though, I want, I guess what I don't want people to see is, I guess the pain behind the passion, right? Because here's the deal. I mean, I do have a PhD in history from Georgia University, as I mentioned, but when I say that line, what I'm not saying is that I spent hours in the lab. Hours. See. So while Johnny and Sally were out on Friday night and Saturday night, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I was reading. Right. I'm spent hours. And so I'm library all shut down, immediate security guards, first name basis. My boy Tariq calls it the cold, lonely walk. I'll take to my car, what I'm saying? Because I young kids at the time. And I had this routine where during the day I had to be dad. So like basically I had to wait till they went to bed. And then, I would go, back to campus. I was sleeping on the floor in my professor's office. I mean, you had to do what you had to do type deal, right? That's what I was in. But my point though is, here I'm in isolation and solitude. Yeah. And I'm not skimming. I said I'm reading. And as I'm reading, what's taking me a long time is I have to pause. I have to reflect. And I try to imagine, like, did this really happen? Were my people really sold like animals? Beaten, savagely treated. I mean, just disrespected, abused, the psychological. I mean, was this legal? Was this really written into the Constitution? No. This had to be a really bad movie. I mean, so it took a lot of time for me to process. I mean, because I'm reading the records, I'm reading the letter, I'm reading the right. I mean, but this is just words on a page. I'm trying to imagine, and again, I've visited numerous plantations, and but that's the thing, though, right? Unlike when I've been to Dachau or I've been to Auschwitz, you actually have the physical facility, of all this horror, and even still, I'm standing in this room in Auschwitz. And I'm like, no, they didn't really release gas under these fake showers. No, they didn't. I'm still in disbelief. And I'm standing physically in the same space. Yeah. Can you imagine like the disconnect of, 200, 400 years ago in terms of the slave pens on the shores? I mean, I've been to the slave castles in, West Africa, but still, I mean, it's hard to imagine because so many of these artifacts are no longer existing, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of pain there, my brother, is all I'm saying. When you really, really think about it. Yeah. And that is part of the problem. A lot of us are not spending or investing the proper amount of time. I didn't say we had to spend all year on it, but more than 2 paragraphs, my G, right? More than 2 paragraphs. I mean, this is important. Yeah. And so when you really think about it, when you really process it, it really is painful. That's right. And that's where the passion comes from in terms of like, okay, that's the flip side of that. I mean, I can't be crying in class and things of that nature. I can't be punching holes in the wall. I can't be doing that, right? I got to be professional. But, it's hard to balance sometimes, especially when, an uninitiated or just, unknowing, we may call it ignorant student. They say something that's like, woo, right? But I'm the educator. I still need to hold it all together and still figure out a way to, show this person the light. Right. Yeah. So that can be tough to do. And lastly, even though I attempt to be objectively minded. I said that was my third.
Yeah.
I want to be honest, man. I do have a bias. I mean, and again, I'm just going to be clean about it.
Yeah.
I am biased. I do have my preferences. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a AI robot, and even still, AI is not unbiased because what? It's a large language learning model is taken from what humans, and humans have their biases. So even AI is not 100% pure. Okay, so let's disabuse that. But I myself, I'm not. And so early in my career, I tried to, be a job, and I do try. I do make an effort. I do make a sincere effort looking at the other side. Well, did Carmelo Anthony have to have a knife in his pocket? No, maybe he didn't. But at the same time, we know that the valuation of life, takes on a different form when race becomes involved, right?
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I'm not talking about just the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I'm just talking about, I mean, even when you look at like that, I think it was in California, that bizarre case where this Stanford swimmer was caught assaulting a female, and he had 0 jail time because the judge thought he had potential in life, right? So this idea that, and again, and it's not, so the person was guilty, committed a savage act. I mean, that's probably number 2 under murder, right? Raping somebody, right? Did it, no argument there. But again, the judge saw value in this person's life, right? And so the whole conversation, I think, is a necessary conversation about when you look at Carmelo Anthony, only, 19, being tried as an adult, 35 years. I didn't hear much conversation around the value of his potential life one time, right? It's like, again, if the brother stabbed him like 17 times, then it's like, whoa, what are you doing here? But this idea of like impulsive, and it was an absolutely horrible, fatal mistake. I mean, Austin Metcalf should be alive and be with us, just like George Floyd should be with us. I mean, just like, am I right? Breonna Taylor should be with us. There's so many names that should be with us, right? So, well, I mean, so it's sad all around. But when we talk about this idea of, oh, I'm unbiased and I have no dog in the fight, that's not true. I do have a bias. I, as a black male, living life as a black male, am absolutely sensitive and partial to the plight of the black man and woman. I mean, that's just what it is. Now, again, it's my job to balance that and make all my students feel comfortable in class to talk about whatever it is that we're talking about. But I would be lying to you if I said I didn't have a bias. And so, you know what I do? I don't lie. I tell the truth. I tell students now, first day of class, you know what? I'm like your toothbrush. Ashanti, you got to ask me, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Ashanti, that means I'm not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. I'm like your toothbrush. I'm not for everybody. You understand? I am a black male teaching this class, right? And you must understand that I will teach you the material. I will give you all the reading materials, right? I will give you a professional job, but understand that it's coming through the lens of a black male. That's the body that's sitting in front of you, and we all would be fools to pretend it was something else.
Yeah. Oof. Come on now. Come on. Okay, I'm glad you went first because you gave me a whole lot of more where I was going with even sharing mine. So I'm gonna do okay. Oh man. Okay. All right. So this is what I drew. I was trying to figure out what I was putting together in this mask here, but the 3 words I put on the front were dedicated, passionate, and caring. Okay. So we had that one in alignment. I really love the way you described passionate, and I really this idea, like I tell the truth. I think, thinking about, I saw Roots when I was maybe 6 years old. I remember coming from elementary school. Maybe I was 7. I don't remember how old I was, but I was young. And my mom was like, sit down. We have to watch this show. Yep. We watched it on PBS. Yep. And every day for like 5, maybe 10 days, we were watching this. And I'm like, what's happening here? why are they doing that to them? Like what it was a movie, but it was almost like it almost felt real, right? It was like my mom was from Little Rock, Arkansas, but I grew up in California. So she had to get out of there. My grandmother was like, girl, you're gonna get us killed with your big mouth. You can go to California with your big mouth because your big mouth, they'll probably tolerate more of your big mouth than California. But you gonna get us, we're in Little Rock. This ain't gonna work. So she moved out to California, is where my grandfather was, and so like I got to grow up in California. Now my cousins, who were most of them were raised in the South, right? Some made it out, again went on to college and did other things, and I have a cousin who will never get out. sadly, right? Hanging with the wrong
Mm,
friends and looking for something. They need somebody to blame. They need somebody to blame
mm,
for whatever happened. And they give deals to deals and deals. And so then you get pushed out of the deal. And now you're the one taking the blame, even though you were in the
mm,
back seat of a car that
mm.
wasn't yours, right? So all those
Oh,
things
gotcha.
that happened
See,
in
caught
our
up, caught up.
caught up. Just
Yep, caught
me
up.
and he,
Mhm,
it was my favorite cousin, right? And then
mm,
now I'm trying to communicate him through letters and those
mm,
kind of things,
mm,
So
mm,
um the
mm.
passionate, the caring,
I know, because that net is so wide, right? That net is so wide. It's it's not difficult to get caught up.
yeah,
That net
oh
is so
man.
wide.
Oh
Mm,
man.
mm,
And those young men who are in our community who wanna feel cool, wanna feel looked up to, wanna
mm,
not be called weak or wimp. So when their friends are telling them, "We're gonna go do this thing,"
mm,
you gotta have a
mm.
lot of
Right,
intestinal fortitude to be
right,
like,
right,
"Nah,
right, right,
I don't do
right,
that kinda stuff.
right,
Nah,
right, right.
my family wouldn't be happy about that. Nah,
Yeah.
I'll see y'all later, right? I'll see y'all at
Mm,
school tomorrow." And I remember
right,
many
right,
of
right.
moments that if I hadn't escaped because of more
Mm,
of the fear of my mom, I wanted to go, but I'm like, my mom said, "Be home at 7. It's 6:45. Y'all talking about an hour escapade. I don't wanna deal with her. So Imma go home for the fear of her."
that's right.
And luckily I went home because what
That's right.
happened with them is
See,
definitely something that would not have been
see,
explainable, And so
see,
those
see.
kind of things are happening. So, and I think the back one of the things I think, and I'll just go quickly is I wrote the word indignant. I wrote worry, and I left the last one blank because I think as you spoke, I think this part of like from seeing roots at a young age and seeing
Mm,
what people can do to other people,
mm,
seeing that this is what happened in our country, knowing how people talked to my mom when we went back to Arkansas, or driving 5 days on Greyhound I in the madness, right? Like, watching people talk, I'm like, "Did that man just say that to my mom?" Like, and me, a little boy from Oakland, California, ain't gonna take nobody talking to
oh,
my
wow,
mom crazy,
wow.
right? And now I'm putting us in danger too because I got a hot head, right? Right.
Right.
And so all the things that I've learned growing up I grew up in California, but spent a lot of time in Arkansas in summers realizing, oh, there's a different world. I
That's right.
live in a different world.
Right.
Same
That's
country,
right.
but I
Right.
live in a dramatically different world.
Good point. Same planet, different worlds.
Different worlds. And the fact that people can't see it, and when I hear
Mm,
people who are willing to ignore history, who are willing to, you almost wonder when I hear people talk about, oh, we don't want to make little white kids feel bad about themselves. The question I really want to ask, if I ever had a chance to ask somebody face to face, is like, how many of your ancestors are in these photos? How many,
mm,
how many of your ancestors are in any of these video clips? Because
mm,
those people belong to somebody. Now,
mm,
if you feel bad because you saw your uncle, your cousin, your great, 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 whatever, standing under a body of a tree, smiling,
mm,
posing, you should feel bad. You should feel bad that your last name matches that last name because you're connected to that person. And whether you believe it or not, you have to own that that's part of your history. And the fact that no one seems to be, I don't see too many videos of people saying, "Hey, this is my grandfather
mm.
under this tree right here."
Right, right,
I,
right, right, right.
how many people should have some feelings of feeling? Now, I don't want you to feel bad about yourself. You should feel
Right.
bad that there was a time where your family believed that that's the kind of behavior that we should pose for pictures beneath.
Absolutely. I mean, and like you said, that's appropriate. I mean, right? Just like, I mean, I feel bad about, reading about, or again, going to the Auschwitz and just, I feel bad.
Yeah,
I feel bad. Just as a human, I don't have to be Jewish to feel bad about that.
that's
I
right.
feel bad. And so this idea that we want to cut off emotion from the black experience,
Yeah,
like I'm confused about that. We're human too, and you should feel bad. I mean, yeah, I feel bad about enslavement. You should too. I mean, right? So that way we can be more sensitive to the after effects and look at repair and reconciliation. Because I think if more people understood the story properly
yeah,
and did feel that connection, I think we'd be having a different conversation right now.
yeah.
Right. I mean, but I think the lack of empathy is because people have shut themselves off because, they
Mhm.
have limited facts and they haven't fully allowed themselves, particularly through the curriculum, to make that connection.
That's
Right.
right.
And I think we can do that. I mean, as early as fourth and fifth grade, we're reading comic books called Mouse, MAUS, right, with the umlauts over the U, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty early age, dealing with very complex topics, when we talk about the Holocaust, and I think the idea is that, well, children need to know. Okay, well, all I'm saying is that we can just be consistent with that mindset, right? We've seen evidence that children do respond, and when taught, they can behave and respond accordingly and appropriately, right?
Ooh.
And I think that's what's honestly missing from this conversation, because again, going back to current events, when I look at the Carmelo Anthony piece, I'm going to be very clear and say that I do believe that the knife stab was an overreaction. That's my opinion. And that something in that he has to pay. But the question for me though is, but how come manslaughter was never really on the table as a conversation piece? It was like it was murder one or else, 35 years to life or else, and it was like, okay, then what about the mitigating factors about him being young and being having potential? See, that's where that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that eye for eye, spade for spade. No, but I mean, I think that's where the lack of empathy, I think is filter into these decisions. And again, I know Carmelo Anthony is the latest case in the news, but the statistics bear out that when dealing with the justice system, if you have a black face or darker face, shall we say, that the odds are not stacked in your favor, right? When it comes to lower jail times, or excuse me, receiving higher jail times for similar crimes, or just not even having the opportunity to speak to a jury of your peers, right? So that's something we take for granted as well, where people might identify and say, you know what, I can connect with this person, and I'm going to therefore judge this person on this reasonable person standard because I'm able to connect. But I mean, I think that there's so many pieces that can be fixed just simply with that concept of proper education and exposure at an early age which will help engender empathy.
Man, well, we've this went faster than when I expected. So right now we're toward the end, and maybe this is not the end. I think the beauty of these conversations is that it's not meant to be like we finished having a conversation. What I'm hoping is this is just the beginning of a connection.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm hoping that as you enjoy your summer, you get ready for the fall, maybe there's opportunity for us to connect again. I want us to connect again. I think there's probably got more things that I need to hear from you and learn from you that we just barely scratched the surface.
Well, thank you, my brother. Also, you have to understand I learned from you as well. And so, it's a mutual exchange. And, I do have 2 books coming out early 2027. So maybe we can come back and talk about that.
Well, let's do it right now. Tell us how people can find you, where they can follow you, where they can follow your journey. Where are the best places for people to connect with you?
100%. Probably the best way is LinkedIn. My social media game is kind of lame, but look for me at Frederick Gooding. f.gooding@tcu.edu is my email address. And I mean, in early 2027, look out for it. If you ever been curious, when was the last time you seen a black statue? I have the answer for you because I'm writing a book about black statues and monuments in Washington, D.C. So that's coming out. But ask yourself, when was the last time you did see a black statue? And then the second book that's coming out, because bottom line is, preview. My premise is that statues are more than just art in a park, but they're actually political pieces that tell us much about the value and visibility of blacks in society. Okay. So that's the lens that we're looking at it through. Right. And then secondly, I think for anybody who liked the Mandalorian and Grogu that just came out, apparently not a lot. The idea is that we still have a lot of Star Wars fans in the house. Here's the first book that ever breaks it down like an enzyme. That's a biological reference for you. And so it's called A Disturbance in the Force, Making Space for Race in the Star Wars Space. There's more to Lando Calrissian than you know. And Finn, we got to talk about it. So all I'm saying is get up. If you're a Star Wars fan, I'm ready for you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So whenever you're ready to share what's coming up next, the project, the launch, come back. But we're going to have you back before, but we're going to definitely have you when you get those running, because I don't know enough about it to know the force. So let's jump in. Let's jump in. We will put all the notes here in the show notes, how they can find you, your LinkedIn, your email there. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you for sharing your mask with me, with us. And I'm looking forward to this being the beginning of more connection.
I appreciate you, Ashanti. Shall not the struggle.
Folks, Dr. Gooding and I shared our masks here publicly, but you can share yours anonymously at millionmask.org. Thank you for listening. Share this episode with somebody who you feel can hear these words, needs to hear these words, or probably don't want to, but should. Share that with somebody who could learn from what Dr. Gooding said here today. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye now.